Welcome to Spotlight on the Arts. I'm your host today. My name is Michael McKeever, and today's topic is why produce gay theater? Joining me on the panel today is the always wonderful actress and producer of Spotlight on the Arts, Miss Iris Acker. Also, the respected theater critic and founder of Florida Theater on Stage, Mr. Bill Hirschman. And last but certainly not least, the very talented and lovely actress, Miss Marjorie Lowe. Please help me and the panel welcome our very special guest today, the artistic director of Island City Stage in Wilton Manors, Mr. Andy Rogow. Andy, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
All right, well, let's get right to it.
Okay.
Why produce gay theater?
Because we were born that way. Which really is the truth. Unlike many of the theaters that have been founded down here that are artist-driven and artists have a specific vision of what they want to produce and then hope to gain an audience, Island City Stage was founded by community members who wanted to have a theater in their community and then asked me to be a part of that. And it's interesting to me, actually, when I talk to audience members or our board members and I say, well, what happens if we expand and, do some plays that aren't specifically gay? They say, no, we really want gay plays. So I think the primary reason is that there's a community that wants gay plays.
But don't you think that producing just gay theater, doesn't that limit your audience base? Do you think you're cutting off a part of the community who might not go because it's gay, or do you think it introduces gay theater to a broader audience?
Well, I think does it introduce anybody to gay theater? Possibly. We certainly get a lot of straight audience. So I think audience that likes theater of all kinds comes to see the plays we do. We certainly are not restrictive in who we allow through the door. But it's, I think like any successful product or brand, you have a niche. And it's easier to sell the niche when people know what it is. So when they come to Island City Stage or Empire Stage in general, which is where we perform, people know they're going to get a specific kind of theater there, and that's what they like. And the great thing about that is they're not title sensitive. So it doesn't matter. I don't have to pick a play that people have heard of before because they'll come because they know the subject matter is going to be something familiar to them and that they like. It's a lot different in the days when, when we're talking about back in the 80s or early 90s, the mainstream regional theaters were not producing a lot of gay plays. There was really a reason to have a specifically gay theater. The gay community wants to see their stories reflected. There were a lot of issues to talk about. Of course, gay plays started, if you forget sort of Boys in the Band, which is sort of recognized as the first, gay play that was widely recognized. The first sort of wave of gay plays was about the AIDS epidemic, and there were lots of them, Normal Heart, As Is, Zero Positive. There was something that writers could really write about and explore, and there was an audience that wanted to see those plays. And of course, AIDS was affecting the community so much, and this was a way to bring the gay community together. They could watch what was happening, they could relate because they were all losing friends or going through it themselves. Well, those plays started to sort of die off when the drug cocktails allowed people with HIV to remain healthy. And so now there wasn't a reason to write AIDS plays anymore. So the next, I think, wave of gay plays was about being accepted into the community in some way, either not being accepted by your family or by your friends or at a job. That was sort of the wave of gay plays. And again, regional theaters weren't producing these on a regular basis. And if they were, it was often in their little, second stage black box, in the basement.
Or the summer part of the season.
Yeah, right. I mean, I remember specifically I was doing summer stock in St. Louis, and the St. Louis rep was doing a play, a gay play, and for them, it's a very conservative area. They have a very conservative audience, but so they did a gay play, but it was down in their little basement theater, and it was a very good production. But it wasn't part of their main season, and I think that was another reason why gay theaters, really sort of popped up across the country, because the regional theaters in those areas weren't serving that population.
It's interesting that I remember the Caldwell in particular would do gay plays during the summer when the snowbirds were
Right.
gone.
Yeah, right.
It's a safer audience.
But for years and years, they would do at least one play during the summer that either had a gay theme or had clearly gay characters. One of the things that I find interesting, though, that Island City Stage has been doing, and I think may talk about yet another round of plays that are coming out, are plays that have gay characters and touch on gay themes, but that have much broader universal
Right.
themes that anyone can relate to. You did this season The Timekeepers, which has a major gay character in it, but that's not what the play is primarily about. It's about broader themes in general.
Relationships.
Yeah.
Relationships.
And in a historical context, what happened to gay people, during World War II that many people don't know about or
Right.
are just vaguely familiar with. But actually, on that vein, an even better example is a play we did recently called Body Awareness that featured a lesbian couple, but it wasn't about them being lesbians.
Right.
And in some ways, it's interesting because it was a very hard sell to the lesbian community. They didn't attend in big numbers.
Why?
I think part of it is that it wasn't directed or produced by a woman, which I think, and it wasn't sexual at all. It was just about this lesbian couple functioning day to day, with an autistic son, and it for some reason we didn't draw them. Now there were some that came and they really enjoyed it, and it was a very successful production for us. But it was still mostly gay men come or straight people. We had a lot of straight people come see that too.
That kind of leads me to the next question, and I think this is a good one. For a while there, it seemed that gay theater was sex romp.
Yeah.
It was all, if there's a naked guy on stage, the gays were going to
yeah.
But they expect
And they still do.
Do they really?
Oh God, yeah. I mean, yeah. Because often what Empire Stage produces are those kind of very sexual farces, and they're sometimes done very well. He brings in good people, but to me it's always kind of the same jokes and the same, there's nudity and there's always a drag queen and people love it. I mean, I don't know if you remember the old Rising Action Theater that
Yes.
used to be, do mostly gay work. Their most successful production ever was Sordid Lives. Now, I don't think straight people know Sordid Lives at all, but in the gay community, it's this big cult classic, and they love it.
Well, and
But it seems that Island City Stage is trying to expand its audience to include a gay audience, but also, certainly with the success of Glee.
Yeah.
I mean, we're finding
Yeah.
people in their homes talking about it, where maybe before we didn't. So are you hoping to build on that with educational programs or community outreach?
Well, I would like to do all of that, actually. And I think that the kinds of plays we're doing actually do appeal to a more broader audience because they're not sexually related. And that's really just a function of my sensibility. I was never one that loved those kinds of sex farces or, shows with lots of drag queens and lots of cursing and the kinds of things that people associate with some gay theater. That was just not who I am
But
or
Andy,
what I produce
how
well.
plentiful is your product? I mean, I know Dan Clancy writes basically gay plays, and they're all wonderful. I mean, you have Timekeepers was just one of them that he wrote. But I mean, isn't it harder to find?
It's definitely harder to find good, what I would call literary gay plays that are really well written, that have really interesting stories. And, we've had some discussion amongst ourselves about where gay theater is going in the next
was
few
my next
years
question for you.
as it becomes more mainstream. Now that it's marriage is legal in so many states and will be legal across the country within the next 2 or 3 years, I have no doubt, and the adoption of children, and now we're part of the mainstream. The plays can't be about wanting to be in the mainstream. Now it is. So where do gay plays go from here? And I don't actually have a good answer for that. I don't know. But I think there's always going to be a need for gay people to want to see
It'll be
plays
interesting to see if you even need that title of the genre.
Yeah,
Maybe
that's true.
it's just going, if we're having plays, if it went from AIDS plays, like you said, to when we had Angels, and then we had the Laramie Project. What's the future going to hold? And do you just have a play about a married couple or parenthood? Or
I thought one of the most interesting, I think, I can't remember if City Theater did it. We've seen twice short plays from the gay marriage plays production. And the one that always struck me as especially interesting was the one where the two older gay men who had been living together for years were trying to decide whether they needed to get married and what that meant. And I think perhaps one of the interesting places to go is exactly what you're talking about, which is that now moving into the mainstream, having which every group from Jews, Irish, African Americans, women, you name it, every group as they become more and more a piece of the mainstream, that would be an interesting thing
What's
to
that
document.
transition
Is that
Proposition
transition?
8, that's another Dan Clancy play. That's really basically what you're saying.
Well,
This play was
and actually what I love about Dan's Proposition 8 is that it's about a couple that's supposedly sort of perfect on the outside, but when you actually explore the relationship, it's not. And it doesn't matter that they're supposed to be the perfect gay couple,
Right.
but they obviously have their own issues. And I think there will be more plays like that. And I think we don't really know. I think it's going to be up to the playwrights to sort of figure out what those stories are. But I think just as there is still a Jewish audience that goes to see Jewish work, there will be a gay audience that always wants to see.
there'll always be someone coming out and needing a voice.
Right. I actually think that's a really good point, Marjorie, because I think young people, there's always going to be somebody coming out trying to come to grips with that, and they're going to want to see stories
And
about
that's what
that.
theater can do for them.
Here's a question. Do you think that's going to be in the next 5, 6, 7 years from now that will still be relevant, that people will have to come out? Or would that be something that becomes part of the mainstream?
As long as there's a really strong religious community in the middle of the country, that will
Just part
always
of
still
puberty.
be.
Andy, I'd like to know more about you. I know our audience wants to know too. Why are you doing what you're doing, and how did it all start?
Yeah. Why am I doing what I'm doing? Well, I had sort of taken a little bit of a break from theater when I left the Hollywood Playhouse. And I was doing some freelance directing and just sort of relaxing, not running a theater. And I was asked by somebody, a man named Mark Grossman, who's a good friend, if I would be interested in helping the Rising Action Theater at the time. Their artistic director was looking to step back, wanted somebody to take over. And I was a little reluctant, especially because I had my own prejudices about gay plays. I specifically didn't go to them, really, because I wasn't interested in the nudity. I wasn't interested in the sex farces. I was like, so I was thinking, well, how do you produce gay plays? I don't know what that is. I don't. My specialty was always musicals. So, which are gay
musicals
plays.
are pretty gay.
But,
That explains it.
And there you go.
Okay.
But I decided that I would try it, and then when Rising Action closed and they decided to open Island City, I said, okay, I'll stay with this. And I asked Michael Leeds to come on board as the associate artistic director. One, because he's a terrific director, and I knew I couldn't direct every play we did, but two, I thought he would bring a really good sensibility. He also is a playwright, and he said, I want someone who can help me find the good plays. And we've been fortunate so far to find those plays. And actually, it was David Gordon, who runs Empire Stage. He brought me the 20th Century Way, which is what we opened Island City Stage with, which I thought was a really interesting play about a piece of history that no one in the gay community knew about. No, I mean, I certainly had never heard, and that's where I think some more other gay plays are going to come about as well, is pieces of gay history that we're just not familiar with. And I thought it was a really fascinating piece of work, and that really set the stage for the kinds of plays we've decided to choose to do.
Actually, that production was fascinating because to me it was the perfect example of blending both worlds together. Yes, it had the male nudity at the very end of it, but at the same time, it was an incredibly intensive, a very intelligent play. that really explored what it was to be a gay man at the turn of that century.
Right. And it was interesting to me, we sold it very well. And the audience really stuck with it, which said to me, okay, this gay audience will sit through a play that was really rather difficult to follow at times because it worked on all these levels. And they sat and they enjoyed it. And so I said, okay, so we can do serious plays like The Timekeepers that we then decided to do, which is also serious. And you
Which
really have to,
we have to mention, of course, that Michael McKeever, who was the star of it,
Yes.
well, I will say, and everybody watching who's seen it will agree with me, brilliant. Wasn't an easy role. And again, Michael, take a little bit. How did you feel about doing that role?
It's really funny. The play's been being kicked around South Florida for almost 10 years.
I heard it's been done all over the world, I hear.
And it's an incredibly beautiful piece. It's very smartly written. And it's funny, the first time that I ever was given the play was about 10 years ago, and I read it. And the play takes place in a small work hut in a concentration camp where a Jewish concentration camp prisoner is forced to work with a young gay prisoner. And the first time I read for the young gay character, and I completely aged out of that in the 10 years that it's taken for it to finally get produced. And when they asked me to come in and read for it, I was honored because I loved the play and I loved the character.
And it sold out
and I
so
think
much
it's a
so
good.
it was held over. Am I right?
Yeah.
Andy?
It got extended.
Play like that.
It's a good example, though,
Yes.
of why a gay theater. Because why did it kick around South Florida for so long?
good question.
When theaters like Caldwell or Gable Stage, it would have been a play that would have fit into their seasons. Why did they choose not to do it?
Why?
And that's another answer to why a gay theater.
So when you sit down, how do you make your choices for your season? What are you looking for?
I go like this.
I love it.
It's funny because I said to Michael Lees, I said, Michael, this is a really dangerous season for us because we have nobody taking their shirt off even.
You can always throw it in.
Yeah, right. I find the plays in different ways. Some people suggest it to me. Like Dan Clancy, who wrote The Timekeepers, was introduced to me by Tony Finstrom and Peter Pileski. And they were the ones who had told me about the play, because I had never heard about the readings that had been done at other theaters. But I also, I read the reviews in the New York Times to see if there's plays that I think might be right for us. People suggest plays to me. So I find them in different ways. It's actually a little difficult down here because we don't have a drama bookshop where I can just go sit myself for hours and thumb through plays. It makes it a little harder. So I have to, that's why I try to read reviews from around the country to see who's doing what plays. That's how I found Body Awareness. I happened to read a review that mentioned it. I said, oh, this sounds interesting. I'll have to look into it more. That's really how I find them.
But you're a one-man team, it sounds like.
Oh, yeah.
When it comes to this, too. You don't have a committee?
No, me and Michael Leeds.
Two people.
We read
It's
everything.
interesting that Timekeepers was kicking around for 10 years. Do you believe that there is still a reticence among mainstream theaters with mainstream audiences, particularly older audiences, to take on plays with a gay theme?
I don't know. I don't think so anymore, certainly. For instance, Gable Stage did 2 gay plays in their season this past year. And I don't think their audience thinks anything of that. So I don't think there's a reticence anymore. I think it's about the sensibilities of each artistic director and what it is they want to produce, or what they feel is just a strong play, period. So we certainly have some competition. It was really mad that Joe did Cock. But he but like Sons of the Prophet, which he did in his past season, I could have never done. It's way too big a play for us right now. So there's certainly plays that are gay that we couldn't yet produce because we're in a very small
That's another
theater.
thing. 50 seats,
Yeah.
am I right?
54 to be
I
exact.
think
More people are
I've
important.
seen you bring chairs in.
Yes, I had to bring in extra chairs.
But I got to tell you, you know how to fill those seats. You do.
But
You do
what
it well.
about expanding? Is this your home to stay?
I think it's going to be for a while. I want to be very careful because I think the reason so many theaters, we've lost so many theaters, are largely not because of lack of audience or interest, it's real estate. You either, they
Which you know
expand too
about.
quickly, which I know about, absolutely. Expand too quickly, you're forced to buy, or rent goes way up, and you have no control over that. So I'm being very cautious about that. I want to make sure before we move to someplace bigger or build someplace that we're filling those seats every single night, and that there's a demand for, more seats. We're sort of getting there now, and I think I'm more concerned about having a bigger stage space actually than more
Interesting,
audience
yes.
seats, because although I love, what we've been able to do with some of our sets, like for Timekeepers or Body Awareness, which I think were really terrific sets, it's still, we can only have a few people on stage. I can't do a musical because once I put a piano on the stage, it takes up half the stage.
You're doing a musical, no, in your season?
Well, we're looking at possibly doing one that would be like a 3 or 4 person. But I still really haven't figured out logistically how to do that. And Michael Leeds and I were actually arguing about this because he'd say, well, why not use taped? We can do taped music. And I'm like, but in that space that feels like a cabaret, I think using taped music's going to seem odd.
I think you're right.
So, it's whether we think we could get a keyboard that's small enough that still sounds
Just
good,
logistics.
that doesn't take take out the space. But I mean, I love the intimacy of Empire Stage, and I think the audience loves Empire Stage. They really do.
I have to say, as an actor who's worked on that stage, it's something really special about talking in a really soft voice.
It's like the old drama works stage.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Something
exactly. There's something really
regular.
lovely about not having to project like you normally would. In fact, during rehearsals for the Timekeepers, one of the notes that Mike Westridge and myself, the two main actors in that show, were constantly giving that note by Michael Leeds. Guys, why are you yelling? Bring it down.
It's hard though, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just,
So used
it's
to-
something you do naturally, yeah.
Sure.
Let me ask, for the civilians out there, I think everyone on this panel knows the answer, but for the civilians out there, it is frequently now, because there are gay characters in mainstream plays and because we only have a certain number of people in the acting pool down here, you have straight people playing gay roles and gay people playing straight roles. Does that pose any additional challenge to those actors? And I guess I should ask both of you. But I mean, is there indeed just one more hurdle there to have to do, or is it just another acting role?
I think it's just another acting role. We partnered with City Theater to do Shorts Gone Wild,
Right.
which we came up with that title, Shorts Gone Wild, because we thought when we asked all the playwrights to write for it that they would write more sexually edgy
A little
things.
wilder.
They all turned out to be these really nice, very sentimental pieces. We're like, where's the wild? We were very happy with them, and the show did very well. But there were 6 actors in that show, and all of them were straight, which I thought was really unusual. And in fact, one of the actors had his first, male kiss. A couple times, actually. So we got very used to it over the course of the run. So, we certainly have blind casting as far as that's concerned. We really are. And we have no trouble. I think one time an actor didn't come that we had asked to come in because I think he was afraid of the gayness or having to act that. And, that was a personal issue for him. But the actors that go out for every theater in town come to us. There seems to be no problem for the actors.
Because in the Katoomba, another theater which has a gay and lesbian theme, they recently did a show. There were 8 or 9 people in the cast, and I think 2 of them were straight. And I'm sorry, 2 of them were gay.
Yeah.
But almost every character in that play was gay, and so, to say that you couldn't tell is being insulting.
Yeah, right.
It's not meant that
But
way.
in the same way you would play a queen when you're not a queen.
Yeah.
It's a role.
Exactly,
It's what you're
exactly.
doing.
Right.
Along the same lines, when you are looking for a play, do you give any preference to gay playwrights, or is if it's just a really good play with a gay?
I've never even thought about whether the playwright was gay or not, ever. It's just whether I like the play or not. I'm assuming that most of the plays we've done have all had gay playwrights. they're all gay. But I didn't even think, like Annie Baker, I'm not sure if she's a lesbian or not, to be honest.
Well, I would think that it just limits. I mean, it limits your choices. If you have a
Yeah.
really good play, it doesn't matter. If the subject's what you want it to be about, it doesn't matter who wrote it.
Right.
It sounds like you're trying to get conversations with the audience, not just put up gay theater, but get a dialogue. So where do you see
Yeah.
the future where would you like to see the future of Island City?
I would love to see, I'd love to see us have our own space eventually with
Yeah.
a roughly 125 seats in a space that's, for your audience that may know, like I like the Arts Center black box, but it's a little too big. I'd like to have something just a tad
Intimate.
smaller. Or something a little bigger than the old DramaWorks space. That's kind of a mid-size. And it's funny that in this region, I mean, in all of South Florida, there's no sort of mid-size theaters. They either are really big or they're really
Especially in
Yeah,
Broward
that's
County.
Yeah, especially in Broward.
County is
We're
the
really
worst as far as that goes.
We're really in need. But I was saying to my board the other day, my goal is 2,000 subscribers. That's a lot.
Wow.
But that could take us 10 years.
That's okay.
But that's kind of
But it's
where I'd like us to.
it's a really great goal to have, and the way that the theater is growing and the programming that you guys are doing is just outstanding. And
Of course, we might be a straight theater band 2 or 3 years.
Go ahead.
no, please.
I am curious, and we don't have a lot of time
Yeah.
left, so I'm probably not going to be able to get through this. But
Try.
I mentioned in a recent column that I wrote about a gay-themed play that, for my money, was not done very well, for what it's worth. I don't think it was written very well, so.
Yeah.
But the audience was crazy about it.
Oh.
And I mean, really happy about it. And the woman behind me said, "That was awesome." And I felt, no, that's because you can relate to it. But what I want is for Jewish plays, African American plays, and gay plays, I want the audience to expect more and demand more,
And I think
not
that
settle for it.
I think theaters like Island City are doing
Yeah.
just that.
Precisely, exactly. That's why I applaud you.
Yeah.
So we do. We really applaud you, Andy. You're doing a great job. It's a
you.
pleasure to have had you here today.
It's been fun. Thank you so much.
There you go. Island City Stage, they're doing great work. There's great theater all over South Florida, and we highly recommend that you go and see some. If you want to know what's playing and where it's playing, just go to floridatheateronstage.com. Thank you so much for joining us and being part of this discussion today. We'll see you next time. Bye.